960 years ago, a fleet of wooden ships crossed the English Channel and quietly rewrote the bloodline of an entire nation. The men on those ships weren't just soldiers looking for land. Many of them became the direct ancestors of kings, queens, and the aristocracy that still holds titles in Britain today. And here's the part that should give you chills. Their surnames never disappeared. They didn't fade into history books. They kept marrying, kept multiplying, and kept quietly passing themselves down through nearly 1,000 years of ordinary families. If you carry one of the 10 names on this list, you're not distantly connected to royalty in some vague romantic sense. You are carrying the actual documented bloodline of the men who built the English crown with their own hands. Stay to the very end, because number 1 on this list belonged to a family that fought its way onto 3 different thrones, not just one. In October of 1066, William, Duke of Normandy, crossed the Channel and defeated King Harold II at the Battle of Hastings. He didn't come alone. He brought with him a tight circle of Norman lords, men whose names were carefully recorded in charters, land grants, and the Domesday Book. Their descendants went on to marry into royal families, sit on royal councils, command armies, and in a handful of remarkable cases, actually become kings and queens themselves. Almost 1,000 years later, their surnames are still walking around in supermarkets, offices, and classrooms, completely unaware of the weight they're carrying. Today we're breaking down 10 of those surnames, the true history hiding behind each one, and exactly how each bloodline connects back to a royal family. Some of these will surprise you. Quick favor before we start, hit that subscribe button if you're new, and drop your last name in the comments below. Let's see how many hidden royals are actually watching this video right now. Surname 1, Percy. The surname Percy comes from the tiny Norman village of Percy and Neville. William de Percy crossed the Channel with the Conqueror and was rewarded with vast estates across Yorkshire, eventually rising to become earls and later dukes of Northumberland. Here's the detail most family history channels leave out entirely. The Percys didn't just serve kings, they married directly into them. Henry Percy, nicknamed Hotspur for the way he spurred his horse into battle, married Elizabeth Mortimer, a great-granddaughter of King Edward III, pulling genuine Plantagenet blood permanently into the Percy line. The family became so powerful in the north of England that medieval chroniclers described them as having their own private kingdom. Hotspur later fought at the Battle of Otterburn, where he was captured by the Scots and held for ransom, a story so dramatic that Shakespeare later wrote him directly into the plays about Henry IV. To this day, the Percy family still occupies Alnwick Castle, the real-world stand-in for Hogwarts in the Harry Potter films. A 900-year-old Norman fortress still lived in by the very bloodline that built it, and the current Duke of Northumberland remains one of the largest private landowners in all of England. Surname 2, Neville. Neville traces back to the village of Neville in Normandy, and few names on this list shaped English history more violently. The Nevilles produced Richard Neville, better known to history as Warwick the Kingmaker, a man so powerful he personally removed one reigning king from the throne and installed another in his place. But the real royal bombshell runs through a woman, Cecily Neville, nicknamed Proud Cis for her fierce personality. She wasn't just a noblewoman married into wealth. She was the mother of 2 kings of England, Edward IV and Richard III, and the grandmother of Elizabeth of York, the queen who founded the entire Tudor royal line. If your surname is Neville, you are carrying the bloodline of the woman who single-handedly created the Tudor dynasty. Surname 3, Mortimer. Mortimer descends from Mortimer and Beaumont in Normandy, and this family's rise is one of the boldest power grabs in English history. Roger Mortimer, 1st Earl of March, effectively ruled England after helping depose King Edward II, governing the country as the lover of Queen Isabella of France. But the real turning point came generations later, when Anne Mortimer married into the House of York, and her Mortimer bloodline became the legal foundation of the entire Yorkist claim to the English throne. In plain terms, the Mortimer family is the reason the Wars of the Roses happened at all. If you're a Mortimer, your ancestors didn't just serve the crown from a distance. They fought a 30-year civil war to take it for themselves. Surname 4, Beaumont. Beaumont comes from Beaumont-le-Roger, another fortified stronghold in Normandy. Robert de Beaumont crossed with William the Conqueror and became Earl of Leicester, founding a dynasty that would go on to produce multiple Earls of Leicester and Warwick over the following centuries. Family tradition, one that genealogists still argue over today, traces the Beaumont line all the way back to Charlemagne, the first Holy Roman Emperor. Proven or not, what's certain is that Beaumonts sat at the very highest tables of English nobility for generations, intermarrying with royal-adjacent families across France and England. The name eventually crossed the Atlantic entirely, giving its name to the city of Beaumont, Texas. Surname 5, Clare. The de Clare family, descended from Richard Fitzgerald, became one of the single most powerful noble houses in medieval England, eventually holding the titles Earl of Hertford and Earl of Gloucester at the same time. The royal connection here is undeniable and direct. Gilbert de Clare, known as the Red Earl for his fiery hair and temper, married Joan of Acre, the actual daughter of King Edward I, making the Clares literal in-laws of the reigning English crown. Here's a bonus fact almost nobody knows. The Clare surname is the origin of the royal title Duke of Clarence, a title still used by the British royal family down to the present generation. Quick pause. If this is blowing your mind so far, tap that like button right now and tell me in the comments exactly which surname on this list belongs to your family. Surname 6, Courtney. Courtney is one of the rare names on this list with a continental French royal connection rather than a purely Norman one, but its impact on European nobility was even bigger than most Norman houses. The Courtney family claimed direct male line descent from the Capetian kings of France, and one member of the family, Peter II of Courtney, actually became Latin Emperor of Constantinople, ruling over a fragment of the old Byzantine Empire. After settling permanently in England, the Courtneys became Earls of Devon, meaning for centuries this single family were simultaneously English earls and blood cousins of the reigning kings of France. Surname 7, Bruce. Bruce comes from Brix, a small town in Normandy, and this is where the story gets genuinely wild. Robert de Bruce crossed with the Conqueror and was granted land across Yorkshire. His descendants gradually moved north into Scotland, embedding themselves so deeply in Scottish politics that one of them, Robert the Bruce, became King of Scots in 1306. That means the most legendary Scottish king in history wasn't originally Scottish at all. His family were Norman French knights long before they ever set foot in a Scottish castle. It gets better. Robert the Bruce's daughter, Marjorie, married Walter Stewart, founding the House of Stuart, which eventually produced every British monarch from James VI onward, right down to today's royal family. Surname 8, Fitzgerald. The Fitz in Fitzgerald comes from the old Norman French phrase for son of. Gerald of Windsor, a Norman castellan stationed in Wales, married the Welsh princess Nest Furch Rhys, and their descendants founded the Fitzgerald dynasty, the Earls of Kildare and Desmond, who became so deeply rooted in Ireland that locals nicknamed them more Irish than the Irish themselves. Over the following centuries, the Fitzgeralds repeatedly intermarried with English royal and noble houses, and one descendant, nicknamed Silken Thomas Fitzgerald, led an open-armed rebellion against King Henry VIII himself. The bloodline didn't stop in Europe either. The Fitzgerald name later traveled to America through the family of Honey Fitz Fitzgerald, the maternal grandfather of President John F. Kennedy. Surname 9, Stafford. Stafford traces back to Robert de Stafford, a Norman companion of the Conqueror, granted lands that would eventually become Staffordshire itself. Through strategic marriage, the Staffords rose to become Dukes of Buckingham. And here's the detail that changes everything. The family descended directly and legitimately from King Edward III through his youngest son, Thomas of Woodstock. That royal blood was so strong and so undeniably legitimate that King Henry VIII eventually had the third Duke of Buckingham executed simply for holding too good a claim to the English throne. Carrying royal blood, in this family's case, was quite literally a death sentence. Surname 10, Montgomery. Montgomery comes from Sainte-Foy de Montgomery in Normandy, and Roger de Montgomery wasn't just another companion of William the Conqueror. He was one of the Conqueror's closest living relatives and most trusted military advisors. He became Earl of Shrewsbury, placing him at the very top tier of Norman nobility, second only to the king himself. His descendants went on to found towns bearing the family name across Wales, England, and eventually the United States, including Montgomery, Alabama, named centuries later after an unrelated but distantly connected branch of the same Norman-French surname line. 10 surnames, 960 years, and in every single case, the royal bloodline never actually disappeared. It just kept marrying, migrating, and multiplying quietly until it landed in ordinary families exactly like yours might be today. If one of these names is sitting in your family tree, you're not imagining the connection, you're living proof of it. If you learned something new today, subscribe for more forgotten royal bloodlines and type the words royal blood in the comments if your surname made this list. See you in the next one.